Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 18 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. Let's get to it. Case file number 2900, written by Serianso, The Bunny on the Wall. When I was a tot, I had night terrors, or so I was told. Most of the time I was basically sleepwalking while having nightmares, from what I gather. I don't recall any of them, but this one time, this happened for real and I was awake. I went to bed early, just as the sun was going down. Must have been around autumn because I'm sure it wasn't past 7:30 when it started actually looking like night. It must have been early, but even then, the moon might have been out. My room had a window that usually shined light on the wall, through the shades anyway. The door was on the opposite side, and this particular night, I was a little uneasy about my door being shut, even if it was cracked. From my bed, that I had been in for maybe half an hour, usually the vibrations would start around now, and then I would drift away into slumberland. In fact, they may have been just about to kick in when I decided to get up out of bed and tiptoe to the cracked door maybe 5 or 6 feet away and see what was outside. Then I would go right back to bed. Well, I get to that point where I can finally make out the outside of the room through the crack in the door, and then it shuts, and the little light I had is extinguished. I basically freeze as reality sinks in. I tried to turn the doorknob and get it to open, but it stuck. I thought Mom was holding it. Thinking fast, I scamper back into bed and get into the covers before I get my butt spanked again. I turn around and face the door and bam, there it is. Flucking shadow imprint of Bugs Bunny on my wall, right next to the door. You gotta be kidding me. I look out the window, and there's nothing there. I do a quick double take. It's still there. And I started screaming, thinking she was right next to the door and would open it. That lasted a good 8 seconds. I am basically having a heart attack, but somehow I get to the door. I try to open it, but fluck, it's locked. I'm basically beating on the door while staring at it. It being so perfectly still. What the fluck? I think somehow I managed to learn how to unlock the door because I got it open and ran as fast as I could into the light of the living room. She didn't hear me scream or beat on the door, but my mom looks at me and can tell. What's wrong, she asks. So I told her, and we did the whole check under the bed routine. She thoroughly inspected the wall, but it was gone. She never saw it, and it was never seen again. It could have been a hallucination, and I mean, I can see how a locked door can get closed on me, air pressure and all that, but I scream bloody murder over Bugs Bunny. Well, I don't think Bugs Bunny would scare me that much, especially just the shadow of it, but still, if you're a kid, okay, I get it. Well, if it happened right now, would I try to figure it out? I would try to find Bugs Bunny himself? Is it a girl? I don't even know. This is Bugs Bunny, right? The one that's chasing the coyote? No, that's the running coyote. No. I am confused by my cartoons right now. There's a carrot involved, I'm sure. Now time for the question of the day. What is your favorite season? Honestly, for me, it's right between winter and fall and winter. You know, that period just at Halloween, basically starting then. The leaves are changing or have changed, maybe a little bit before Halloween. Then you enter into the Halloween vibe. The smell in the air is different. It's crisp. It's clean. The air is cool. And then you have Halloween, you get the candy or just the costumes, and you get to, see everything. I mean, I don't go trick-or-treating anymore at 35, but I do buy myself candy, because why not? I'm an adult and I can have candy for dinner if I want. And then you transition to November, you have Thanksgiving, and it's just a pleasant time then. Then you slowly drift into winter, and then you get Christmas too. And that early winter period, or just leading up to it, that first snowfall, the blanket of snow is fresh, the snow itself is dampening sound, it's peaceful, and of course the holidays, New Year's Eve and Christmas. Just the best time of the year. No question. People who like summer more, sorry, I cannot comprehend it. It's hot, it's sticky, it's bright, it's blinding, it's loud. And the bugs everywhere. God, terrible. Case file number 2901. Written by, well, you look at that. 20 minutes at the edge of reality. Hi everyone. I personally experienced this years ago while working in Switzerland. It was a sunny but cool spring day in early of April. I walked alongside a rural road bordered by trees, in between open fields. No buildings nearby, no glass or reflective surfaces, no cars passing. The fields were in the early stages of growth, so there wasn't any visible pollen, swarms, or high vegetation that could obscure or filter the light. I was well rested, in great mood, not stressed, not ill, and not under the influence of anything. I didn't feel tired, disassociated, or overwhelmed in any way. It was a normal day, and I was walking to work. As I was walking in the shadows of the trees lining the road, I noticed something strange in the distance, maybe 100 meters ahead. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but the closer I got, the more impossible it looked. One tree's shadow was flickering, literally. The shadow cast on the ground by the trees was blinking in and out, around 2 to 3 times per second. It looked like someone was flipping a light switch on its shadow, but the tree itself wasn't moving. The sunlight was stable. All other tree shadows were completely normal. I needed to understand, so I tested it carefully. I was so confused that I stayed about 20 minutes just observing and experimenting. I walked around the tree, same flickering from every angle. I stood in front of, behind, and beside the tree, no difference. I aligned my own shadow with the trees. When the tree shadow disappeared, my shadow stayed visible, meaning the sunlight was not blocked or changed. I placed my bag on the ground behind the tree, so in its shadow. The bag's shadow remained steady, but the tree's shadow continued flickering independently around it. The flickering was perfectly rhythmic, not random or wind-based. There were no bugs, no swarms, no haze, no shimmer, no reflection from nearby surfaces. Just this one shadow, behaving as if reality had a bug. I know how powerful the brain is at patterning and misinterpreting, so I've looked into retinal effects, ocular migraines, atmospheric optics, shadow illusions, reflections, bugs, pollen, haze, etc. But none of these explain why one tree shadow would flicker like a strobe light for that long, without affecting anything else, nor why objects behind it remained properly lit and shadowed. It was like the shadow layer for that tree alone was switching on and off, while everything else stayed normal, and I couldn't explain or reproduce it. If you've seen something similar, please let me know. I'm not claiming a glitch in the Matrix, or maybe, at this point. I'm genuinely just baffled. I had no phone at the time so I couldn't film it, but this wasn't a brief hallucination or trick of the eye. I was present, alert, and actively testing what I saw, and it stayed consistent for the entire 20 minutes I could stay. Very unique story. I haven't heard of a flickering shadow. We've had, of course, the glitch where reality completely seems to shut down for a split second. It kind of seems like the sun goes out, but it's really just the whole processing for a small local area fades. But this one's much more isolated. It kind of reminds me more of the black dot incident, where it's like a tiny sphere of reality isn't being rendered or just not processing. So this shadow was glitched out, but this is just a proper glitch as far as you'd think of like a glitch in a game where the textures aren't rendering or the lighting system isn't perfect. The fact that you even placed objects where the shadow would be, or rather create their own shadows and they didn't affect it, they were still normal, but the shadow of the tree, yeah. So really, the coding of the tree itself was faulty. Crazy. Case file number 2902. Written by Flat Intern 2498. Sky like a broken screen. This was over 10 years ago now. I was driving alone approaching the highway, and while halfway down the on-ramp, the entire sky flashed for a solid 2 seconds. I mean absolutely lit up. I scanned left, right, mouth and eyes probably wide open, and every inch of sky was pure white. Honestly surprised I held my lane. It took me a moment to realize what I just witnessed. I rolled my window down, anticipating insane thunder, and aside from wind noise, it was silent. I spent the remaining 20 to 30 minutes of my drive trying to make sense of it. The flash had no central point or source as you might see with lightning or if a transformer blew. The only way I can describe it is like an old TV or computer monitor glitch instantly flashed back to black. I got home and scoured Google and news and social media, but couldn't find anything. I'd feel less crazy if I'd even passed another driver with a shocked expression, but it was late in a quieter part of town. Kept to myself then and still have no idea what it was. I'd say I'm a pretty logical guy, but after seeing more stories like this, it's sometimes hard not to view the sky as a screen. There's only one other story I can remember reading about this. It was a very similar situation. I think it was a husband and wife in a car as well, and on the horizon they saw a bright white flash, but there was no sound. Now, if it was lightning, if it was an explosion, even like a meteor burst in the air, which does happen, there's a huge pressure wave that follows that. So I don't think it could be anything natural like that, unless maybe if you're far enough away, but anything that bright seems like it would produce a shockwave that would travel really far. To the point where if you could see it, it's gonna reach you. Maybe not super strong, but you would feel it. It could even shatter windows dozens of miles away, if we're talking about a meteor burst. Like there was one recently in Russia. Russia gets hit a lot by skybursts, yeah. It just makes me think of what's going on in alternate universes where maybe missiles are being fired in different universes and the results are very blinding. Case file number 2903, written by Hermano Bluth, trolled by the Almighty. I used to play on Pogo when I was 12 or 13, and I was on it religiously. That meant I was always in chat rooms. I met a ton of people and eventually became friends with a few of them. In fact, that's how I got my first ex-girlfriend then. That's a big thing when you were an introverted 12-year-old. Anyway, one night I managed to sneak on the family computer one night to play. After a few minutes of playing, I began to focus on the chat room. I began talking to a lovely girl, I believe she was a girl. I've yet to mention my name or anything, and yet after a few minutes I see this come up in the chat log. Hello Hermano, this is God. Obviously as a 12-year-old, that was supposed to be in bed. This freaked me the fluck out. After a minute or so of collecting my thoughts, I went to scroll up to see who it was. As I looked for it, it completely disappeared. There was no trace of it. I tried searching for my name. I tried searching for God. I was left speechless. So, fearing for the worst, I dashed quietly to bed, hoping no one would notice. To this day, I've tried to put 1 plus 1 together. Was I dreaming? Was I seeing things? Did God really reach out to me through a crappy gaming website? Or was I the elaborate victim of my first trolling? Man, being 12 sucked. So let's get something straight. If I was God, or the master of the simulation, there would be a lot of trolling going on. I would alter the laws of physics temporarily, just to mess with scientists, kind of like in the 3-body problem, but not maliciously, not trying to invade them as God, just messing with them, Because it's fun. It's fun to mess with people's minds. Kindly. Tell them afterwards, like, Hermano, I am God. Don't worry, it's just a prank, bro. You're good. Case file number 2904, written by Spit and Snot. When the dogs went mad. One summer, when I was 14, I was staying with some relatives out in the boonies. The setting itself was somewhat unsettling for an urban-bred kid like myself. The rickety house was at the foot of dense forest, with 3 or 4 neighboring homes, distanced by sprawling flora. I was looking after my younger cousin late one night. We were watching Extreme Makeover Home Edition. This fact in particular is rather haunting, so this story may be somewhat anticlimactic. The couch we were sitting on was back against the wall, and to the left of it was a door leading outside that we had left open in hopes of mitigating the stifling heat. The screen door, however, was closed. They had dogs that stayed outside, as did the neighboring homes, breaking the silence of the night, and blocking out the banshee-like shrill of Ty Paddington's voice, mind you. All of the dogs simultaneously started barking like mad. 2 seconds later, the screen door started swinging open and slamming shut repeatedly. None of the wind chimes that hung outside the door made a sound. My cousin and I hightailed it out of there pretty quickly and locked ourselves in a bedroom until the rest of the household came home. When they did, they seemed confused and unresponsive. I believe that they thought we were just making the whole thing up. So, not sure what the dog saw, but gross username. Case file number 2905, written by It's Sarcasm. The Unanswered Tone. In middle school, I was in my backyard and I heard a set of tones coming from somewhere in the neighborhood, suburban, like 700 Hz and 500 Hz alternating, maybe 2 seconds long each. I couldn't nail down a direction, but thought it was weird to be hearing such pure tones amplified outside over such a distance. Fast forward a year or so, and I call my then girlfriend's house phone. I can't honestly remember how many things went through, but instead of someone picking up, the exact same tone sequence played through the phone. Freaked out, I hung up and redialed. My girlfriend answered this time and said the phone had not rung at her house for a while and had no idea what I was babbling on about. To kick things up a conspiratorial notch, she does live across the street from the entrance to the CIA. I heard the tones one more time, coming from somewhere else outside in my neighborhood, but the opposite side of the house, maybe 2 years later, but I've never been able to find any explanation since. A survey of how phone systems work and what kinds of tones can be reasonably expected to come over a telephone wire turned up nothing. Thoughts? And no, this is not sarcasm. Next to the CIA, where do you live? Damn. Maybe some sort of broadcasting test? Transmitting over smaller regions? Case file number 2906, written by Cool Steven. Fractals in the Clouds. One day in 2020, my daughter and I were about to go for a walk. It was probably 2 p.m., sunny spring day. For some reason, I had an urge to look up. And what I saw against that blue sky was numerous small triangles. I realized they were spaced perfectly apart from one another in big triangle patterns, perfectly apart from one another in one big triangle. And then as I looked around the sky, I noticed there were countless triangles of triangles as far as I could see. They were uniform in size, shape, and color. They appeared as if they were higher in the sky than a plane would be, and judging on that, they must have been bigger than a plane as well, at least 5 times by my estimate. It really freaked me out, and my daughter, who was almost 4 at the time, was asking what I was looking at and if I was okay. So I stopped looking and tried to have a normal walk with her. I realized after we did our usual loop and made it home that I never took a picture, even though I'm certain my phone's camera wouldn't have picked it up. So I finally gazed back up when we were home, and I couldn't see anything anymore. It was so scary, and I've never been able to find confirmation that another person has seen this before. But now I look up every day when I walk outside. Maybe I'll see it again, and this time I'll get a picture or video, or a witness that isn't a toddler. Okay, so what if there are a lot of aliens here, and they're all cloaked, and for some reason, they chose to appear to you? Disengage all cloaks. Revelation. There's a lot of stories of triangular-shaped UFOs. Not only that, which makes me think there's different species of aliens here, not just one. Case file number 2907, written by 30DLO. Cornfield Visitors. I grew up in a rural area. One night when I was about 10, my mom was driving my younger brother and me home. As we passed through an area with cornfields on both sides of the road, we noticed 3 slow-moving, low-flying aircraft moving over the fields with searchlights. They were pointed down into the cornfields. We assumed that they were helicopters looking for marijuana patches. However, we had the windows down and didn't hear the typical helicopter whoop whoop whoop. My mom pulled over on the side of the road, trying to figure out what the aircraft were. They were moving towards us, and as they approached, we noticed that they were triangle-shaped and had pale blue lights at each corner. They moved closer and still total silence. Just as they passed over our vehicle, they took off at jet speed and disappeared into the distance within seconds, without a sound. No one in my family believes in aliens, but to this day we are unable to come up with an explanation that makes sense. Case file number 2908, written by Anonymous. An extra large catch. I was about 10. My father and I were night fishing at a local pond. We looked up in the sky, and there was a disc-shaped object up there. It was about twice the size of a full moon, slightly oval, and it appeared to have a few small dots on one side of it. It was white in color and glowing. Think of a brighter version of a full moon and perhaps just a bit shimmery. It was almost directly overhead. I noticed it first and then said, "Dad, what is that?" and pointed up at it. He looked up, stood there for a second and said, "What the fluck?" We stood there watching it for a good minute, and it stayed there completely motionless. Then it began to gently move in a direction opposite the little dots, really slowly. And then suddenly it accelerated toward the horizon, going from almost directly overhead to going out of sight over the horizon in about a second. It was a cloudless night, so there was no way it could be a spotlight trick. I don't know of any man-made aerial vehicle that could accelerate like that. I still have no idea to this day what it was. Case file number 2909, written by Miller Keving. What She Left Behind. My Oma lived alone for a number of years after my Opa died the month I turned 1. After she had a heart attack and bypass surgery, she sold the home they raised my mother and her siblings in after moving from Germany and moved to an apartment building for senior citizens less than a mile from our home. After a couple more heart attacks and moderately long stints in the hospital, she decided to sign the do not resuscitate paperwork. She felt she had lived a wonderful life, and if her time came, it came. Our family hosted yearly Labor Day parties, and one year, sometime after deciding on DNR, she came over to our house despite not feeling very well. She stayed for a few hours before she went back home. A couple of weeks later, my mom was picking her up to go shopping and became worried when she didn't come down or call her cell. When she went upstairs, she found her lying face down on the floor in front of the door with her purse on her shoulder and her jacket draped over across her arm, ready to go to the store. My Oma was sharp and wise till the end. She wasn't one to write notes to herself other than shopping lists and garment measurements, as a retired seamstress. When my mom went into the kitchen to use the phone to call for the ambulance, she found a post-it note on the counter. I started cleaning out the dresser drawers. I think she knew her time was coming, and that's why she came to the party, and that's why she wrote the note. So not especially, inexplicable as a story, just kinda sad, but I think in our final moments we do have that pressure that applies to us, like on your soul, like you're gonna be detached soon, get ready. But I don't think it's the end. I can't think it's the end. Case file number 2910, written by Triguntry, the mother I never knew. To explain things first, I do believe in the whole spirit world, but I'm still skeptical about things. My dad, who was in the Air Force, got promoted to colonel, which meant we left our house for some of the historical houses on the base. Nice place, big rooms, and old. I believe it is more than 40 years old, as it had a horse carriage driveway. It dipped really low into the ground and was so narrow. I got my own room, which was huge. Anyway, I'm not sure when it happened, but it happened. I felt someone was touching me when I went to sleep. Not in a perverse way, but a gentle way. Each night, I felt like someone was rubbing my back softly, up and down, as if a mother was rubbing her child's back to soothe her child who was sick. It was nice. Along with that, I always felt like someone was sitting on the bed with me. The creepy part was the fact that I swore the pillow moved up and down like placing your head over a chest. It was comforting though. After my dad retired, we moved off base to be civilians. I thought this feeling would follow, but it didn't. It made me really sad. It still does. It gave me comfort when I felt upset and I didn't want to turn to my real and alive mom. A year later, my mom took me to this supernatural meetup. It was an okay meeting. 95% were old women. Well, one meeting, we go around the table talking about any supernatural experiences we had. Frankly, we had a laundry list of events. Ghost stalks me, apparently. When I came to this event above, everyone looked at me confused and shocked. I talked to one of the psychics, and she said that most likely that a mother ghost was watching over me. She thought that I was her child. Case file number 2911, written by Althricist, the Haunted Zenith. My brother and I had a small TV in our room, one of those 17-inch Zeniths. Earlier in the day, we had either watched horror movies or talked about ghost stories or some such. This was years ago, and I was in the bathroom and heard the TV click on, then click off. It had a hard plastic switch with a distinct click. I hear it click a few more times and figure he's screwing around and going to pretend he isn't touching it. I go into our room and look at it and say something along the lines of, "Ha, not going to scare me with that." He is staring at the TV and says he didn't touch it. I look over at the TV and watch it turn itself on with the click of the button. then it starts to get fast. Click off, click on, click off. He is in his bed and I'm standing beside it. We are both about 5 feet from the stand. It just keeps getting faster. Click, 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 until the TV isn't actually able to turn off and on fast enough and is changing maybe every other click. I grab a stick or broom handle we happen to have in our room and press the button. The TV then stays off. This has never happened before, or in the couple years after that we had the TV. Did not happen again. I cannot for the life of me figure out how the spring in it could have possibly caused that or anything else without a decent amount of physical force. I will forever remember this event. Case file number 2912, written by Electronic Employee 3049, Pixelated Cosmos. I've been questioning our existence since this. My neighbor saw it with me too, so I know it was real. We were watching a satellite go across the sky, right by the third star down the handle on the Big Dipper. The satellite went on by, then the unexplainable happened a second later. It was like the sky glitched out for a few seconds, as if someone smeared the sky with their hand in a particular area, like it was pixelated or had some strange pattern over it, kind of in a striped, flowing square shape. I thought my eyes were playing a trick on me, but then my neighbor said, "Dude, do you see that?" I couldn't believe she saw it too. Then every hair on my body stood straight up. I was speechless and still am. Are we in a created world? Is this a simulation? What did I just experience? I can't wrap my head about what we saw last night. That's why I'm here. Please enlighten me. Again, this strikes me as reminiscent of the black dot, a part of reality not rendering properly, or entirely in that case, but in this case just, or the flickering shadow. Just glitches in parts of the rendering pipeline. And yeah, all signs point to the simulation. Case file number 2913, written by El Furioso, The Invisible Welcome. When I started dating my wife, I heard stories about strange happenings at her house. Everyone living there had a story. Her oldest brother's room has strange noises. The original owner died of natural causes in that room. My wife experienced sensations of someone sitting on her and pressing her down, possibly partial sleep paralysis in my opinion, etc. So all I had to go off were those various stories until a few years into our relationship. Late one afternoon, we came back to her house, and when we got to the front door, she realized she had forgotten her keys and couldn't open it. We knocked several times. It was summer, so the kitchen window by the front door was open. After one of our knocks, I heard her mother call out in Spanish, "Open the door for Cici." I told my wife that her mom was coming. She said she knew because she had heard her as well. We waited for a minute or two before knocking again. I think my wife may have even yelled into the window for her mom. We got no response. We were puzzled. We ended up removing the screen from my wife's bedroom window so she could climb in and unlock the door. We walked through the entire house and found no one. We were pretty creeped out, especially when her sister's car pulled into the driveway a few minutes later with her mother in the passenger seat. A similar situation happened to my brothers-in-law after my incident. I live in that house now. The fun continues. Case file number 2914, written by Midoriable, Between Heaven and Sleep. When I was 14, I had consecutive dreams about once or twice a month where I would meet a young man. Each time, he would be in his early 20s and someone, my mom, dad, cousin, etc., would tell me that he was my half-brother. He was different each time. Sometimes I would like him, sometimes not. It got to be so common that I finally told my mom about them. She immediately burst into tears and told me she had been married once before and gotten pregnant. Her previous husband was an abusive douche, and she'd had an abortion. It was too soon to know what gender the baby was, but she always felt like it was a boy. That year, my little sister was 7, I was 14, and he would have been 21. So, skip forward a few months during which I had been begging God and everything to have a chance to meet him and see what he really turned out to be. I know this is weird, and this bit I can't explain at all, only to say that one day I had a dream. I don't remember any details, but I know everything was incredibly green, and when I woke up, I was sad beyond anything I felt before or since. I couldn't get out of bed for the entire day. I felt lost and empty. It took me weeks to get over that feeling. I think maybe I might have met him in some version of heaven or the afterlife. I don't know why, but that part's embarrassing. Please don't judge me for it. Case file number 2915, written by Anonymous. The November Omen. This happened when I was 11 years old. It was November 11th, 2001. Me being young had to follow my mom around when it came to being home alone. My brother and my dad had work that evening, and my mother had a dinner she had to go to. She told me to get ready to go spend the evening with her at dinner. My sister lived with her boyfriend at the time. We left about 7 p.m. that evening, while my brother and dad left about 5 p.m. We turned everything off, TV, lights, etc. After about a few hours, we came back home. We noticed that the lights were on in the living room. We immediately thought either my dad or brother came home early from work. As we proceed to open the door, the phone starts ringing. I quickly take my shoes off to catch the ringing phone, which is in the living room. My mom is still taking her shoes off. I ran down the hallway towards the living room, and I noticed that no one was there. I didn't mind. I picked up the phone. As soon as I put the phone to my ear, the TV shuts off, the light turns off, and the phone line goes dead. My mom turns on the hallway light and says, "What happened?" As I'm in shock still holding a phone to my ear, I respond, "I don't know." She proceeds to check if anyone came home, but no one is home. I put the phone down to see who called, and I noticed the time was 11:11 p.m. The caller ID was unknown. I turned on the TV and the channel it was on was 11. It was the 11th month, on the 11th day of the year 01. My mother called my brother and dad to see if they came home, and both of them said they were still at work. I called my sister, and she responded that she didn't come home at all that evening. Me and my mother were dumbfounded. We were the last ones to leave and the first ones that came back. What's the weirdest thing is, ever since that night, I've always been seeing the time at 11:11, morning or night. It's been branded on me for some reason. Before that moment, I recalled seeing 11:11, but after that moment, I see it every day. Case file number 2916, written by Betty Rage. The Crooked Run. Near where I live, there's a creepy and rather empty residential town that is shaped like a circle, as in all the streets go in a circular pattern. It's really easy to lose yourself down all the streets, as many of them are grown over with grass and end in cul-de-sacs with no houses, and generally all look the same and unfinished. Anyways, my boyfriend and I like photography, so we decided to drive out there to get some spooky pictures. The weather was perfect, breezy and warm, with a gloomy sky like it was about to rain. It was around 7 p.m. in the fall, if that gives you an idea of what the lighting was like. So we're driving around, completely lost, when we come to a sort of clearing. In this clearing, there's just this animal, just standing there staring right at us. At first I thought it was a bobcat, which is common in the forest areas of Florida, where I'm from. I tell my boyfriend to stop so I can take a picture. The thing still hasn't moved, and I'm finally able to see it's not a bobcat. I start thinking that it's a dog, but its legs are so tall, so thin. Its ears are huge, and it's got these tiny bright eyes. It just kept standing and staring, and we stared back for what felt like an eternity. I kept looking into its eyes and feeling numb. I rolled down the window, moving slowly so I could get the photo without scaring it off. My window is rolled down, and it hasn't moved an inch. I finally raise the camera, and the animal runs off into the woods behind it. The run was terrifying. It didn't run like any dog I've ever seen. It ran crooked, with some sort of lopping stride. About a week later, without mentioning to her, my grandma, who lives about an hour from where we saw this animal, mentioned seeing this freakishly tall and thin dog that her and my grandpa watched from their porch. She described it just as I did, with the eerie gait and all huge ears. My boyfriend tries to convince me that it was a coyote, but after Googling them and scrolling through hundreds of photos of them, they all look close, but not quite right. I think the fact your grandma saw it too means there's some kind of connection to your family this animal has. Is it a spirit, from that family embodied in this animal? I don't know. Whatever it might be. Is there malicious intent? Well, I wouldn't go trying to pet it. Case file number 2917. Written by Limino123. The Hook That Multiplied. Okay, so to start, while I was in the hospital with an AVM, artervenous malformation, and getting brain surgery, my grandma picked up my floor for me, as if I fell on a trip or something. I basically KO'd, and my balance was bad because the surgery was in a spot that controls balance. I only bought one 5mm light-up crochet hook. I swear on my fucking life, on everything, I only bought one. I know I only bought one because I wanted to be able to put it in my purse while on the bus home. I didn't buy two, I know I didn't. But when I returned, two purple light-up 5mm crochet hooks sitting innocently on my desk. When I swear on my fucking life, I only bought one. I know I only have one. It was a singular package crochet hook. You can't get that type in packages of multiple. And I hadn't bought multiple crochet hooks. I swear on my life, my family, my house, my cats, of everything I love, I only bought one. Yet there are two. This is an intense story, mainly just the reaction to it. Yeah, we're all accustomed to DOP here, but hey, even if we are, or especially if you aren't, you're gonna just exclaim profusely, "What the fuck is going on?" It's really the universe gaslighting us. Well, back to me being God and pranking everyone. Yeah, I'd do this. Now time for the jokes of the day. A guy in a leather jacket told me if I gave him $100, after 6 weeks, he would pay me $500. Turned out to be a Fonzie scheme. Which word becomes shorter if you add 2 letters? Short. If you take the first 2 letters of the title of each of the 7 Harry Potter books, it spells out a secret message. Ha 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 ha. Walked into the local pizza restaurant where they sell pizza slices, along with full pizzas, salads, beer, etc. While I was standing in the glass case where the slices are on display, choosing a few to take home, and a young kid behind the case asks if the gentleman next to me needs help. As he peers into the case, he says, "No, I'm just looking for my wife." To which I reply, "Well, she's not in there." The man looks at me like I'm a nutjob while the kid is trying to hold it together. I met a sexy Welsh girl at a party. She said, "Hey, why don't you come back to mine?" So I did, and spent the next 20 years mining coal. Gotta read the fine print. Video up here. YouTube thinks you'll like it. Check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you next time.